The stars had never been kind to Earth. For 800 years, the great civilizations of the galaxy looked at the small blue planet and saw nothing worth their attention. They watched humanity crawl from caves to cities, from horses to rockets, from radio waves to primitive space stations. They watched and they laughed. To them, humans were like insects building hills in the dirt busy, yes, but meaningless in the grand picture of the universe, the Galactic Concord. A union of over 200 spacefaring species, had a name for worlds like Earth. They called them primitive reserves. These were planets too weak to matter, too young to threaten, too small to notice. Earth sat in their records as entry number 7412, a footnote in a database that stretched across 10,000 star systems. Admiral Una had spent her entire life knowing this truth. She stood now in the command center of Station Whisper, a secret human outpost hidden among the asteroids between Mars and Jupiter. The station did not officially exist. No government on Earth admitted to its presence. For 40 years, men and women had lived and died here, watching the stars, listening to alien signals, and preparing for a day they hoped would never come. Today, that day had arrived. "Show me again," Una said. Her voice was calm, but her hands gripped the railing in front of her until her knuckles turned white. The young officer at the sensor console, a man named Keo, pulled up the display. Points of light appeared on the screen, 12 of them, moving in perfect formation at the edge of the solar system. "They dropped out of faster-than-light travel 6 hours ago," Keo reported. "They're not trying to hide. They want us to see them." Una studied the formation. She had memorized the ship designs of every known species in the galaxy. These vessels were long and black, shaped like knives, built for war and nothing else. "Velith," she said quietly. Keo nodded. His face had gone pale. Everyone on the station knew what that name meant. The Velith Dominion was one of the oldest empires in the galaxy. They did not trade. They did not negotiate. They did not make friends. They conquered. World after world had fallen to their fleets over the centuries. They stripped planets of resources, enslaved populations, and moved on to the next target. The Galactic Concord tolerated them because fighting them was too expensive, and because the Velith were smart enough to only attack worlds that nobody important cared about. Worlds like Earth. Una closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her expression had hardened into stone. "Send a coded transmission to Earth Command. Priority Black. The Chancellor needs to see this personally." 3 hours later, Una stood in a virtual meeting room. The walls around her displayed a perfect recreation of the Chancellor's office in Geneva, though in reality she had not left Station Whisper. Across from her sat Chancellor Taiho, the leader of Earth's unified government. Taiho was an old man with silver hair and tired eyes. He had led humanity through 3 global crises and negotiated the peace that finally united Earth's nations under one banner. People said he was the wisest leader humanity had ever produced. Right now, he looked like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. "How long do we have?" he asked. "Those are scout ships," Una replied. "They're mapping our defenses, studying our technology, looking for weaknesses. Based on Velith patterns from other invasions, we have approximately 6 months before the main fleet arrives." 6 months. Taiho leaned back in his chair. "And the Galactic Concord? Have they responded to our emergency request for protection?" Una hesitated. This was the part she had been dreading. "They responded, Chancellor, but not in the way we hoped." She pulled up a document and sent it to his display. Taiho read it in silence. As he read, his face changed. The tiredness left his eyes, replaced by something cold and dangerous. "They sold us," he said finally. His voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, sir." The Concorde made a deal with the Velith Dominion 3 years ago. In exchange for the Velith leaving Concorde space alone, they agreed to hand over 12 primitive reserve worlds. Earth was on that list. The Velith have been planning this invasion ever since. Taiho set the document down. For a long moment, he said nothing. The silence stretched between them like a wire about to snap. 800 years, he said at last. For 800 years, we sent signals into the stars. We begged for contact. We dreamed of joining the galactic community. And this is their answer. They sold us like cattle. Sir, I'm sorry. I know this is Taiho held up his hand, and Yuna fell silent. When he looked at her, she was surprised to see that he was smiling. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had been waiting for something his whole life. Admiral, what do you know about the Deep Ocean Protocol? Yuna frowned. I've never heard of it. Good. That means we kept the secret. Taiho stood and walked to the window of his virtual office. Outside, the fake sunlight of the simulation lit his face. 200 years ago, we detected our first alien signal. We realized we were not alone. We also realized something else. The galaxy was not a friendly place. It was a jungle, full of predators, and we were very small prey. He turned back to face her. So we started preparing. In secret. Away from every satellite, every sensor, every probe the Concorde sent to watch us. We built something, Admiral. Something they never expected. What did we build? Taiho's smile widened. The Velith think they're coming to conquer a primitive world. They think they'll find a helpless population with no way to fight back. They think Earth is just another easy target. He pressed a button on his desk, and new images appeared on the display between them. Yuna stared at them, trying to understand what she was seeing. Her heart began to pound. They're wrong, Taiho continued. We've been quiet for 800 years, Admiral. They thought our silence meant we were weak. They thought we had nothing to hide. But silence can mean something else entirely. The images showed ships. Thousands of ships. Massive warships with designs unlike anything Yuna had ever seen. They floated in darkness, row after row, fleet after fleet. Where are these? She asked, her voice shaking. Hidden, Taiho replied. In places no one would ever think to look. Under our oceans. Inside hollowed-out asteroids. On the dark side of our moon. We've been building them for 2 centuries, Admiral. Generation after generation, working in secret, telling no one. Waiting. Yuna felt dizzy. Her entire understanding of humanity's place in the universe had just been turned upside down. We call it the Silent Fleet, Taiho said. And in 6 months, when the Velith arrive expecting sheep, they're going to find wolves instead. He walked toward her, his eyes burning with determination. I'm promoting you, Admiral. You're going to help me lead this fleet. You're going to help me show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of. They ignored us for centuries. They sold us like we were nothing. Now we're going to make them remember our name. Yuna straightened her spine and saluted. For the first time in her life, she felt hope rising in her chest like a fire. What are your orders, Chancellor? Taiho looked out at the stars one more time. Wake the fleet. It's time for Earth to stop being quiet. Commander Jisoo had served in the Navy for 15 years. She had sailed every ocean on Earth. She had commanded submarines that could dive deeper than any vessel in official records. She thought she knew all of humanity's secrets. She was wrong. The message came at midnight. A black helicopter landed on her submarine while it floated in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. 2 officers in unmarked uniforms handed her sealed orders and told her to come with them immediately. She was not allowed to tell her crew where she was going. She was not allowed to say goodbye. 6 hours later, Jisoo stood in an elevator that was descending into the Earth. The numbers on the display climbed higher and higher, 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, 3. She was going deeper than any human structure should exist. The pressure at this depth would crush a normal building like paper. When the elevator finally stopped and the doors opened, Jisoo stepped out into a cavern so vast that she could not see the far walls. The ceiling stretched above her like the sky of an underground world. And filling that impossible space, row after row, silent and waiting, were warships. She counted them automatically, a habit from years of military training. 10 in the first row, 20 in the second, 50 in the third. The rows kept going, fading into the distant darkness. Hundreds of ships, thousands. Beautiful, isn't it? Jisoo turned. A man stood beside her, wearing the simple clothes of an engineer rather than a military uniform. He was young, perhaps 30, with kind eyes and oil stains on his fingers. His name tag read, Dohon. "What is this place?" Jisoo asked. Her voice echoed in the massive cavern. "We call it the Cradle," Dohon replied. "This is where the Silent Fleet was born." "Well, one of the places. There are 12 facilities like this around the world. Under oceans, inside mountains, beneath deserts. All hidden, all secret." Jisoo walked toward the nearest ship. It was enormous, easily 3 times the size of any aircraft carrier she had ever seen. But its design was strange. The hull was covered in a material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. There were no visible windows, no obvious weapons, no markings of any kind. "How is this possible?" she asked. "How did we build all of this without anyone knowing?" Doan smiled sadly. "Many people knew. They just didn't live to tell anyone. My grandfather worked on this project. So did my father. They spent their entire lives down here, building these ships, and they died down here too. They never saw sunlight again after they joined the project. That was the price of secrecy." Jisoo felt a chill run down her spine. They gave up everything. They gave up everything so that humanity would have a chance, Dohon agreed. They knew that someday the galaxy would come for us. They wanted to make sure we could fight back. He led her through the facility, explaining as they walked. The ships used technology that humanity had spent 2 centuries developing in secret. Some of it came from crashed alien vessels that governments had hidden from the public. Some of it came from intercepted transmissions between Concord species. And some of it, the most important parts, came from human minds pushing beyond anything the galaxy had ever imagined. The aliens used conventional faster-than-light drives, Dohun explained. They bend space in front of their ships and ride the wave. It's fast, but it creates a signal. Every species in the galaxy can detect when someone is using FTL. It's like lighting a torch in a dark room. He stopped beside a console and pulled up a technical display. Our ships don't work that way. We fold space. We don't travel through the distance. We remove it entirely. One moment the ship is here. The next moment it's somewhere else. No trace. No trace. No warning. Ghosts, Jisoo said quietly. Exactly. The Silent Fleet can appear anywhere, strike without warning, and vanish before the enemy knows what happened. The galaxy has never seen anything like it. They won't know how to fight us. They reached a large hangar at the center of the facility. Inside stood a single ship, larger and more elegant than any of the others. Its hull was the color of deep night, and strange patterns were etched into its surface patterns that seemed to shift and move when Jisoo looked at them directly. "This is the Unspoken," Dohun said with obvious pride. "The flagship of the Silent Fleet, the most advanced warship ever built by any species in the galaxy. She's faster, stronger, and deadlier than anything the Velith or the Concord have ever produced." He turned to Jisoo and extended his hand. "She's yours, Commander. Chancellor Taiho chose you personally. You're going to lead our fleet into battle. Jisoo stared at him. Me? Why me? Because you're the best we have. Your records, your instincts, your ability to stay calm under pressure. Everything points to you. Humanity needs a leader who won't hesitate when the moment comes. The Chancellor believes you're that leader. Jisoo looked up at the unspoken. The ship seemed to be waiting for her, patient and silent, like a predator ready to hunt. How many people know about all this? She asked. Right now? About 50,000. Crew members, engineers, officers, everyone who will serve in the fleet. They've all been living in secret facilities like this one, training for years, preparing for a war they hoped would never happen. And if we fail? Dohan's expression grew serious. If we fail, the Velith will enslave every human on Earth. They'll strip our planet of resources and leave it a dead rock floating in space. Our species will either die or spend eternity in chains. He paused. But we're not going to fail, Commander. We've been preparing for this for 200 years. Every generation passed down their knowledge, their skills, their hope. We carry the dreams of millions of people who never lived to see this day. Jisoo climbed the ramp that led into the unspoken. Inside, the ship was like nothing she had ever seen. The corridors were wide and clean, lit by soft blue lights that responded to her presence. The bridge was a circle of advanced consoles surrounding a central command chair. Crew members stood at their stations, and they all turned to look at her as she entered. They were young and old, men and women from every nation on Earth. They wore no national flags, no unit patches, no marks of their former militaries. They wore only the simple black uniform of the Silent Fleet, with a single symbol on their shoulders, an image of Earth, small and blue and precious. Commander on the bridge, someone announced. Jisoo walked to the command chair and stood before it. She thought about everything she had seen today. The secret fleet, the hidden bases, the generations of people who had sacrificed everything to build humanity's last hope. The weight of their dreams pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. She sat in the chair. All stations, report status, she ordered. One by one, the crew responded. Weapons ready. Engines ready. Navigation ready. Communications ready. Every system on the ship was fully operational, waiting for her command. Jisoo looked at the main display, which showed the vast cavern outside and the thousands of ships floating in darkness. Soon, these ships would rise from their hiding places. Soon, they would show the galaxy what humanity could do. Begin fleet awakening sequence, she said. It's time to let the wolves out of the cage. Across the world, in 12 hidden facilities, the Silent Fleet began to stir. Lights flickered on in ships that had waited in darkness for decades. Engines that had never been fired roared to life. Crews took their stations, hearts pounding with fear and hope and determination. For 200 years, humanity had been silent. That silence was about to end. The Velith fleet arrived 3 weeks early. They came not because they needed to, but because they wanted to send a message. The Dominion was tired of waiting. They wanted Earth to see their power. They wanted humans to feel despair before the end. 50 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Each ship was massive, covered in weapons, designed to inspire terror. The Velith had conquered 63 worlds with ships like these. They had never lost a single vessel in combat against a primitive species. Today would be different. Captain Mira stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Pioneer. She was a small woman with short hair and sharp eyes. She had been chosen for this mission because she was the best actor in the fleet, and because she was not afraid to die. The Pioneer was an old ship, built 40 years ago with technology that the galaxy would recognize. It was exactly the kind of vessel a primitive world would use to defend itself. It looked desperate. It looked weak. That was the point dot behind Myra. 19 other ships floated in formation. They were all old, all outdated, all perfectly designed to make the Velith feel superior. This was the decoy fleet, the bait in humanity's trap. "They're hailing us," reported her communications officer, a nervous young man named Junho. "Put them on screen," Myra ordered. The display flickered, and a Velith commander appeared. The alien was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face. Its mouth was full of small, sharp teeth that it showed when it spoke. "Primitive creatures," the Velith said. Its translator turned the alien language into flat, emotionless words. "You have been claimed by the Dominion. Your world belongs to us. Surrender now, and some of you will be allowed to live as servants. Resist, and you will all die." Myra made her voice tremble. She had practiced this performance 100 times. "Please, we don't want war. We're peaceful. We have no weapons that can threaten you. We only want to talk." The Velith laughed. It was an ugly sound, like rocks grinding together. "Talk? There is nothing to talk about. You are insects. You have always been insects. The galaxy ignored you because you were not worth noticing. Now you will serve the Dominion or you will be erased. Please," Myra begged. "Give us time. Let us contact our leaders. Maybe we can arrange something. Enough." The Velith's 4 eyes narrowed. "Your time is over. Your species is over. Watch now as we destroy your pathetic fleet. Then you will understand that hope is meaningless." The transmission ended. On the display, the 50 Velith warships began to move forward. Weapons charging Myra dropped a frightened act and smiled coldly. "All ships, execute evasive pattern Delta. Keep them focused on us. Draw them into the kill zone." The decoy fleet scattered, ships flying in different directions, exactly as panicking primitives would do. The Velith pursued with casual confidence. They fired their weapons almost lazily, enjoying the hunt. 2 of Myra's ships exploded. Then 3 more. Myra gripped her chair as the Pioneer shook from a near miss. "How much longer?" she demanded. 30 seconds, Junho replied. "The silent fleet is in position. All remaining ships, head for the asteroid belt. Make it look like we're trying to hide." The surviving decoy ships ran. The Velith followed, laughing across open channels, making jokes about the pathetic humans. They were having fun. They had no idea what was coming. Then the stars went dark. It happened in an instant. 2,000 human warships materialized around the Velith fleet. They appeared from nowhere, with no warning, with no light, with no sound. One moment the Velith were alone in space. The next moment they were surrounded by death. The Velith commander's voice cut through all channels. For the first time, it sounded uncertain. "What is this? Where did they come from? Why didn't we detect?" The silent fleet opened fire. Human weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They didn't shoot energy beams or missiles, or any of the conventional weapons that spacefaring species used. They fired something else, concentrated points of collapsed space that tore through Velith shields like paper and crushed their hulls like empty cans. The first 10 Velith ships died in the opening second. They simply ceased to exist, twisted into unrecognizable shapes by forces they couldn't understand. The next 20 died before they could even turn to face their attackers. The remaining ships tried to run, to fight, to call for help, but the silent fleet was everywhere, blocking every escape route, cutting off every transmission. Commander Jisoo watched the battle from the bridge of the unspoken. Her face showed no emotion. She had trained for this moment her entire life. Every simulation, every exercise, every sleepless night had led to this. "No survivors," she ordered quietly. "We can't let any of them report back." "Not yet." The silent fleet obeyed. Human ships chased down every Velith vessel. destroyed every escape pod, silenced every distress signal. The Velith fought bravely. They were a warrior species. After all, the bravery meant nothing against an enemy they couldn't see coming, couldn't track, couldn't understand. 11 minutes after the battle began, it was over. 50 Velith warships had been reduced to clouds of spinning debris. Not a single human ship was lost. Not a single human life was spent. Jisoo opened a channel to the decoy fleet. Captain Myra, status report. Myra's face appeared on the display. She was bleeding from a cut on her forehead, but she was smiling. We lost 8 ships, Commander. 47 dead. But we did our job. We kept them focused on us until you could strike. Their sacrifice will be remembered, Jisoo promised. Return to base for repairs. You've earned some rest. As the decoy fleet limped away, Admiral Yuna's voice came through on a private channel. Commander, the Chancellor is ready to send our message to the Galactic Concord. Do it, Jisoo replied. Across the galaxy, in the great council chambers of the Concord, in the command centers of 100 civilizations, in the courts of emperors and presidents and kings, a transmission arrived. It showed the battle in perfect detail, the Velith fleet's arrival, their arrogant threats, their easy confidence. And then it showed their destruction. At the end of the recording, Admiral Yuna appeared on screen. She stood straight and calm, her voice steady and clear. This message is for the Galactic Concord and all who serve it. For 800 years you ignored Earth. You called us primitive. You sold us to the Velith like animals at a market. You thought we were nothing. She paused, and behind her, the image showed the silent fleet in all its glory, 2,000 warships floating in perfect formation. Each one a monument to human determination. You were wrong. We are not nothing. We are humanity. And today, we announce our presence to the galaxy. We did not start this conflict. We did not ask for war. But if war comes to us, we will end it. Another pause. The entire galaxy watched, silent and stunned. We request a meeting with the Concord to discuss a peaceful resolution. We prefer diplomacy to bloodshed. But make no mistake, if you threaten our world again, if you try to sell us again, if you treat us as less than equals, you will learn what we are truly capable of. Yuna's eyes were cold and hard as she delivered her final words. Earth is no longer a primitive reserve. Earth is awake, and the galaxy will never ignore us again. The transmission ended. In council chambers across 1,000 star systems, shocked aliens turned to each other with the same question in their minds. What had humanity become? And what would they do next? The Galactic Concord's capital was a space station the size of a small moon. It floated in neutral space, far from any empire's territory, a symbol of unity and cooperation among the stars. For thousands of years, it had been the center of galactic civilization, a place where species met, traded, and settled their differences without war. Today, it was a place of fear. Diplomat Imbi walked through the station's great halls with her head held high. She was small compared to most of the aliens around her. Some of them stood 3 meters tall. Some had more limbs than she could count. Some floated in the air or crawled along the walls. All of them stared at her as she passed. She was the first human to ever set foot on this station. She was also the most hated creature in the galaxy at this moment. Behind her walked a small group of human guards, all of them armed, all of them ready to die protecting her. They knew the odds. Every species in the Concord wanted humanity punished for what they had done to the Velith fleet. Many of them wanted humanity destroyed entirely. The guards did not expect to leave this station alive, but Yumbi was not afraid. She had been chosen for this mission because fear could not touch her. She had grown up in poverty, fought her way through a world that tried to crush her at every turn, and become the finest diplomatic mind on Earth. She had stared down presidents and generals. She would not flinch before a roomful of angry aliens. The doors to the great assembly opened before her. The chamber was enormous, designed to hold representatives from over 200 species. Seats rose in tiers around a central platform, each section decorated in the colors and symbols of a different civilization. Today, every seat was filled. Thousands of eyes, some with 2, some with a dozen, some with none at all, turned to watch her enter. The head of the Concord, an ancient being called the Prime Speaker, sat on an elevated throne at the far end of the chamber. It was a member of a species so old that no one remembered their original name. They had simply become known as the Elders, the first spacefaring race, the founders of galactic civilization, the keepers of order. "You stand accused," the Prime Speaker announced. Its voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "Earth has violated the sovereignty of the Velith Dominion. Earth has destroyed 50 warships without provocation. Earth has developed weapons that threaten the stability of the galaxy. How do you answer these charges?" Yumbi climbed the steps to the central platform. She carried no weapons, no documents, no technology of any kind. She carried only her voice and her truth. "I answer with a question," she said. Her words were translated instantly into hundreds of languages, broadcast to every corner of the chamber. "How many worlds has the Concord sold to the Velith?" Silence. The Prime Speaker's expression did not change. "That question is not relevant to." "It is the only relevant question," Umbi interrupted. Gasps echoed through the chamber. No one had ever interrupted the Prime Speaker. "You call us criminals for defending ourselves. You say we had no provocation. But we were sold. Our entire species, 8 billion people, traded to the Dominion like merchandise. That is not peace. That is not justice. That is slavery." "The Concord does not practice slavery," the Prime Speaker said coldly. Umbi smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "No? Then let me show you what the Concord does practice." She raised her hand, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. Images began to flash across it, documents, recordings, transmissions that humanity had intercepted over 2 centuries of secret surveillance. "Planet Vorix," Yunbi announced. "Population of 2 billion. Traded to the Velith 60 years ago. Current status, extinct." The display showed images of a dead world, its cities in ruins, its oceans dried up, its people gone. "Planet Thesser. Population of 4 billion. Traded to the Velith 112 years ago. Current status, slave labor camps. Images of chains of suffering, of beings worked to death in mines and factories. Planet Kos, Planet Enduri, Planet Maverick." The list went on. Planet after planet, species after species, all traded away like unwanted garbage. All destroyed or enslaved. All forgotten, the chamber had grown deadly silent. Some representatives looked away from the display. Others stared with horror. A few, those who had once been primitives themselves, wept openly. 47 worlds, Yumbi continued. 47 species. Billions of lives. All sacrificed to keep the Velith happy. All sold by this Concord, by this assembly, by you. She pointed at the Prime Speaker. Earth was supposed to be number 48. The Prime Speaker's ancient face had finally shown emotion, a flicker of something that might have been shame. Those decisions were made for the greater good. The Velith are too powerful to fight. Without those sacrifices, the Dominion would have attacked Concord space. Billions more would have died. So you chose to let others die instead, Yumbi said. You looked at worlds full of people who dreamed of the stars just like you once did, and you decided their lives were worth less than yours. You called them primitives. You called them insignificant. You use those words to make yourselves feel better about murdering them. She turned to face the assembly. But here is the truth you refuse to see. Those primitives you abandoned? They were you. Every species in this chamber was primitive once. Every one of you crawled up from nothing, learned to build, learned to dream, learned to reach for the stars. The only difference between you and the dead worlds on that list is luck. You were lucky enough to grow strong before the Velith noticed you. They were not. Representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Yumbi could see her words hitting home. Earth was supposed to be weak, she continued. We were supposed to be helpless. But we weren't. We saw what was coming, and we prepared. We built a fleet in secret. We developed technology you never imagined possible. And when the Velith came to enslave us, we crushed them. She raised her voice, letting it ring through the chamber. Now the Dominion is mobilizing its full military. 10,000 warships are being gathered to attack Earth. They want revenge. They want to make an example of us. And the Concord, instead of standing with us against tyranny, wants to punish us for daring to fight back. The Prime Speaker leaned forward. What would you have us do? Go to war with the Velith? Sacrifice our own people for a species we barely know? I would have you be what you claim to be, Yumbi replied. A union of civilizations working together for the good of all. Not a club of cowards sacrificing the weak to save themselves. The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted at each other, some demanding Earth's destruction, others calling for support. Old alliances cracked as species turned on species. The secrets Yumbi had revealed were tearing the Concord apart. The Prime Speaker raised a hand for silence. Slowly, order returned. You speak boldly, human, the Elder said. But the Velith fleet is coming. 10,000 ships against your 2,000. No amount of clever technology can overcome those odds. You will be destroyed, and then the Dominion will turn its anger on anyone who supported you. Why should we risk our own survival for a doomed species? Yumbi met the ancient being's gaze without flinching. Because if you don't, you prove that everything I've said is true. You prove that the Concord is nothing but a collection of cowards hiding behind the bodies of those you've sacrificed. You prove that your civilization is built on lies and fear. She paused. But there's another reason. A more practical one. And what is that? Yumbi smiled again. And this time, there was something dangerous in it. You've seen what we did to 50 Velith ships. You haven't seen what we can do to 10,000. The Dominion thinks they're coming to destroy us. They're wrong. They're coming to die. She turned and began walking toward the exit. At the doors, she stopped and looked back one last time. You have a choice, Galactic Concord. Stand with humanity and help us build a galaxy where no world is ever sold again. Or stand against us and learn what it means to be our enemy. The doors closed behind her. In the chamber. 200 species sat in stunned silence, realizing that the galaxy they knew was about to change forever. And somewhere in deep space, the Velith war fleet began its journey toward Earth, unaware that they were sailing toward their doom. The war lasted 3 months. In the first week, the Velith learned fear. Their war fleet of 10,000 ships entered human space with absolute confidence. The Dominion had conquered 63 worlds. They had crushed rebellions, destroyed civilizations, and built an empire on the bones of the weak. They expected Earth to be another easy victory. They were wrong. The silent fleet did not fight like any enemy the Velith had ever faced. Human ships appeared without warning, struck with devastating force, and vanished before the Dominion could respond. Supply convoys disappeared. Command vessels exploded in the middle of their own formations. Admirals died in their beds, killed by boarding parties that came and went like ghosts. By the end of the first week, the Velith had lost 800 ships without destroying a single human vessel. In the second month, The Velith learned despair. Commander Jesu led the main assault, jumping the unspoken from system to system, always one step ahead of the enemy. She did not fight like a traditional commander. She fought like a hunter, patient and ruthless, picking off her prey one by one. Her tactics were simple. Hit them where they were weak. Run when they were strong. Never give them a target they could catch. The Velith tried to adapt, but they were too slow, too predictable, too used to fighting enemies who stood and died. Against an enemy that could be anywhere and nowhere, they had no answer. Engineer Dohan worked without sleep, keeping the fleet's stealth systems functioning, improving them with each battle. He had spent his whole life preparing for this war, and he poured everything he had into winning it. His father and grandfather had built these ships. He would make sure their sacrifice meant something. Admiral Yuna coordinated the overall strategy from Station Whisper. She watched the war unfold across 17 star systems, moving fleets like pieces on a game board, always thinking 3 moves ahead. She had studied Velith tactics for decades. She knew their weaknesses better than they knew themselves. And on distant worlds, something unexpected began to happen. The species that the Velith had conquered, the slaves in their minds, the servants in their cities, the survivors hiding in the shadows heard about humanity's war. They heard about the primitive world that had dared to fight back. They heard about the silent fleet that appeared from nowhere and struck without mercy. They began to hope. In the 3rd month, the Velith learned defeat. Jesu led the final assault on the Dominion's homeworld. It was a massive planet, covered in cities and fortresses, protected by the largest defensive fleet in the galaxy. 3,000 warships guarded it, everything the Velith had left. The silent fleet arrived in waves, each one appearing at a different point around the planet, striking from every direction at once. The Velith defenses crumbled under the assault. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries burned and died in the cold emptiness of space. But Jesu had not come to conquer. As the battle raged, human ships began broadcasting a message on every frequency, in every language the translators could produce. It was not a demand for surrender. It was something else entirely. People of the Dominion, the message said, we are not your enemy. Your rulers told you that humans were weak, that we would be easy prey, that our world would make you rich. They lied. They have always lied. They sent your fathers and sons and daughters to die in a war that could never be won, because they were too proud to admit their mistake. On the planet's surface, Velith citizens stopped to listen. Soldiers paused in their duties. Workers looked up from their tasks. The message continued. We do not want to destroy you. We do not want revenge. We want the same thing that every species in the galaxy wants: freedom, safety, a chance to live in peace. Your rulers took that chance away from dozens of worlds. They sold innocent people into slavery. They built their empire on suffering and death. Jesu's voice came through clearly, steady and calm. But empires built on lies cannot stand forever. Today, you have a choice. Continue fighting for rulers who see you as nothing more than tools to be used and thrown away. Or stand with us and help build a galaxy where no species, not human, not Velith, not anyone is ever sold again. The response was not immediate. For hours, the battle continued. But slowly, one by one, Velith ships began to stop firing. Captains who had grown tired of endless war. Soldiers who had seen too many friends die for nothing. Citizens who had always known something was wrong with their empire. They made their choice. The Dominion's government fell not to human weapons, but to its own people. When the ruling council tried to order their remaining forces to fight to the death, those forces refused. When the council tried to flee, they were captured by their own guards. When the council demanded loyalty, they received only silence. The war was over. 6 months later, Diplomat Umbi stood once again in the great assembly of the Galactic Concord. The chamber looked the same as before, but everything had changed. Representatives who had once demanded humanity's destruction now looked at her with something like respect. The Prime Speaker, ancient and unreadable, watched from its throne. Earth has proven itself, the Prime Speaker announced. The Velith Dominion has been defeated. The slaves of their empire have been freed. And the Concord has been forced to face truths we had long denied. Yumbi nodded but said nothing. She knew that words were unnecessary now. Actions had spoken louder than anything she could say. The Assembly has voted, the Prime Speaker continued. Earth is hereby admitted as a full member of the Galactic Concord, with all the rights and responsibilities that membership carries. There was applause from many sections of the chamber. Yumbi allowed herself a small smile. But we propose something more, the Prime Speaker said. For too long, this Concord has failed in its duty to protect the weak. We spoke of unity while sacrificing those who could not defend themselves. That failure ends today. The Elder rose from its throne and descended the steps toward Yumbi. It was the first time anyone could remember the Prime Speaker leaving its seat during an assembly. We propose the creation of a new council, the Prime Speaker announced. A council dedicated to finding and protecting developing worlds before they can be exploited. A council that will ensure no species ever suffers the fate we nearly forced upon humanity. The ancient being stopped before Yumbi and, incredibly, bowed its head. We ask that humanity lead this council. You have earned that right. Yumbi felt tears forming in her eyes, but she held them back. We accept. Not for glory, not for power, but because it's right. Because somewhere out there, on some small world orbiting some forgotten star, a species is looking up at the sky and dreaming of the future. They deserve a chance. Everyone deserves a chance. That night, Engineer Dohan stood on the observation deck of a Concord station, looking out at the stars. Yumbi found him there, still wearing her diplomatic robes. Beautiful, isn't it? She said. Dohan nodded slowly. My grandfather spent his entire life in a cave, building ships he never got to see fly. My father died before the war even started. They gave up everything for a future they would never live to see. He paused. I wonder what they would think if they could see us now. I think they would be proud, Yunbi replied. Not just of what we built, but of what we chose to do with it. We could have conquered. We could have become exactly like the Velith. But we didn't. Do you think the galaxy will ever trust us? Dohan asked. Eumbi considered the question. No, not completely. We scared them too badly for that. But they'll respect us. And maybe, in time, that respect will grow into something else. Something better. On Earth, in a quiet garden overlooking the ocean, Commander Jisoo stood alone. The war was over. The fleet was at rest. The galaxy was changing. But she could not stop thinking about the people who had died to make this moment possible. She placed a small stone on a memorial wall, one stone among thousands, each representing someone who had given their life for humanity's survival. Generations of workers, engineers, soldiers, and dreamers. People who had lived and died in secret, never knowing if their sacrifice would matter. We did it, she whispered to them. We won. Not just the war, but something more. We showed them what we're made of. We showed them that being ignored doesn't mean being weak. That being small doesn't mean being helpless. That being silent doesn't mean being afraid. The wind carried her words out over the ocean, toward the horizon, toward the stars. Humanity had been silent for 800 years. Now, at last, the galaxy was listening, and they would never forget what they heard.